We're ready for the final pillow on this bed. And again, I'm going to remind you, I'm not a professional seamstress. I just try to figure it out and do what I do with the skills that I have. So we're looking at this one right here. Let's remember that our pillowcase from the previous video, we measured it. It's 29.5 by 20 inches. And again, I'm going to do a French seam on this. So, that means that it's only going to be stitched on the long end and then this end. So I have to figure my fabric to go all the way around from the front to the back and allow 1 inch for the seam allowances, 1/2 inch on each end, which is 1 inch, 2 ends. So if I double 20, that's 40, and then I add the inch for the seam allowance, that's 41 inches. So I know that going this way, it's got to be 41. Okie dokie. Now, if you can see here, I have like 4 parts. This would be part 1. This would be part 2. This is a little trim piece, part 3. This is 4. Oh, and then there's ties, 5. There's actually 6 because they've got another gray piece down here, but I know I'm not going to have enough material for that. So I'm not even going to think about that. I'm going to work backwards. We're going to look at this number 4 first. To me, it looks like what they did was they took this pillow right here and shoved it in this other thing. Like this is just a covered pillow. So let's start with that. Let's call it, I don't know what to call it. The blue tip. So if you can imagine, all right, here's my pillow. Here's my pillow. So this piece, I'm thinking it'll be seamed here and here. That'll be where I seam it. And then I'll just push it down over the pillow like that. All the way down to the end of the pillow. And that looks to me like it's about 6 inches maybe that's showing, because it's about the same distance as this cuff that we made that was 6 inches. Could be less, I don't know. Maybe 4. You know, I might just need to go with 4 because I don't have very much of this blue fabric left. So if I only had 4 inches sticking out, plus 1 inch for the seam allowance, that'd be 9 inches. That probably is going to be the best option. Okay. This little blue piece here, I think it needs to be the same width that this one was, and that was 4 inches. So we'll need to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance on both sides. So that would be 5 by 41. Your blue cuff. Now this number 3 piece is just going to be the white again. You can see that it's the white, and it needs to be doubled. So however wide I want to make that, I'll fold it in half. I think 2 inches would, I think that'd look too wide. I think 1.5 inches would be better. So 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches is 3. Plus we need to add the inch for seam allowance. I might want it a little smaller than that. So I think I'm just going to only add a 1/2 inch for the seam allowance, maybe. So 3.5 times 41. And we're going to call that the white trim. So all that's left to measure or figure out would be this white main piece, this number 1. You know, and it needs to be shorter than the end of the pillow, but I think what I'm gonna do is cut it long, because I have plenty of fabric to do that. I think I'll go ahead and cut it long and then see, I can trim it off once I measure it to the pillow. So with that in mind, I think I'm just going to subtract 4 or 5 inches maybe from that. So 5 from 29.5 is 24.5, and then add an inch for seam allowances, so 25.5. I'm just gonna make it 26, and then I can fit it. You'll see when we go through the process, I can fit it and cut to whatever I need to cut it. And then I also need to remember I need 2 ties. Okie dokie. Time to cut. But I did not have enough to do the next blue cuff here, the 5-incher by 41. But I did have enough of this, the blue velvet. So I cut a piece and it was exactly 41 inches long, so I guess that was meant to be. Something else I've decided to do is on this 3.5 inch cuff. See, when the big pieces, when they're folded, they're gonna run sideways. I think the cuff would be cute going the opposite direction. So, got enough here, I know. I'm gonna turn this direction to make my cuff. Okay, well, last one. This is the one that I'm making, except I'm not using that piece as I explained. Now, I didn't videotape it, but I did cut me a couple of pieces here for ties. And this is the first thing that I'm going to need to make because of how I'm going to be sewing this together. To make the ties, all I will do is fold them right sides together. And I will stitch across and down one side, leaving the other end open. And then I'll show you how I turn those. So let's go to the sewing machine. I have this handy little tool here that has a little catch on it. Sometimes it's easy to do, sometimes not. I'm also going to trim that across a little shorter. So the way I do it is I run this up through here. I make sure this is kind of down. Run it all the way up. Coming up through the top where the hook is. Hold on to it. Put this on my ring right here and carefully work fabric. Once you get it going, then it goes. Here we go. get it to come out here. Okay. All right. Now I can take that out. I got a hold of it. Ow. I'm just going to carefully use a pen to kind of pull these corners out. Now, before I press it, what I like to do, I mean, you can use a pen like this in the seam and kind of use that to pull on it, pull up on it, try to get it straight. That takes forever. What I like to do is lick my thumb and forefinger and then just rub that seam back and forth. Okay, here's the main body, and remember I'm using the velvet piece this time, so I need to pin this. All right, I think I'm going to actually go stitch this first, and then I'll come back and show you. I didn't have enough of this blue. I had to splice it, but it will be on the back side, so it will not show. So what I'm doing now is I'm folding it in half lengthwise. This is going to be kind of like a little cap on the end of the pillow. So I'm gonna kind of tuck this in here. Just to see, because I want it to fit pretty tightly. So it's going to be about right there. So I kind of got it marked with my finger here. And this fabric is pretty stretchy too. So my side seam's going to be right there. We have to figure out which end to sew closed. Now, if I didn't have this seam here, it wouldn't matter. Now, I want my pillow to face exactly the same way theirs is. So when I flip this, see, there's my seam. I don't want that to show. So this is the way it's going to face. So I'm going to put a pin in this end to know that's where I got to sew my seam closed. I'll flip it back around. Here's my pin. So this is the side that I want to sew closed. Okay, so I'm going to stitch all the way across here, pivot, and go down. Okie dokie. So here's my little fake coverlet here on the end of this pillow. And what I'm trying to do, I'm going to open this out. Alright, just got it on there. Now, turn it this way so y'all can see and I can work. Here are my little ties. Tie needs to be in the middle. What I'm going to do is be sewing this back in this seam here to hold it in place. But I needed to do this to mark my center, plus I needed to see if I wanted to shorten these ties any. So when I tie it, I just did like a regular bow. Yeah, I think I'm going to need all that length. So now I have it marked. So now I'm going to go back in and sew across here, and I'll probably sew across in a couple of places on the tie so that it's secure. Not too much left to finish this up. Now this little cuff here, if you'll remember, I cut it the other direction, whereas this goes up and down, this goes across. The first thing I want to do is press this under on one end a 1/2 inch. Okay, now I'll show you why I did that. With right sides together, I'm going to pin this and I'm only going to take a 1/4 inch seam. Now this is the very edge of the pillow, so I do not want a raw seam here. So after I stitch this, I'll come back and show you how I'm going to create it where this is encapsulated inside the trim piece. I've pressed it. So now what I'm going to do is fold this just past my seam, where my stitch is. That looks pretty even to me. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch right in what's called the ditch. Stitch in the ditch. And that will grab this fabric back here and close that seam. Now again, I'm going to do a French seam. I know these aren't even on this side. That sticks out a little further, so I just got to line them up. And again, I need to make sure that this top band lines up. The bottom band lines up. And I want it to stick out about that much. So this to show me where to cut. All right, now I need to stitch, and I'm going to do a 3/8 inch seam all the way around, and I'll be back. Now I'm going to try to trim this down a little bit more to about an 1/8. Now we want to turn it wrong side out. Okay, now we need to press these two seams as flat as we can get them. And again, I wet my fingers and roll while I go press it. All right, I've pressed it. Now I want to stitch 3/8 inch away down the side and down the bottom. And after I do that, when I turn it, the whole seam will be encased. So let me stitch that and I'll come back and show you. Then we'll be close to done. All right, it's done, it's pressed, and you can see it's a complete seam. No raw edges. That's how you do a French seam. So here we go. Ta-da! I know I said ta-da, but I wasn't quite totally happy. I found enough of the blue to make like a little 2-inch headband for the center of this velvet. I like that better.
First day of spring, and I just wanna sing to everything that's moving, every single little thing. To them birds flying free, fish in the sea, flowers and trees, every little bumblebee. I wanna sing, ooh, ah, oh. To the kids playing hoops, going loop-de-loop, their rainbow-colored bouncy balls and their ice cream scoops. Got my shoes in my hand and my feet in the sand. I got 20 ducklings in a row like a little marching band, and they sing, ooh. To the couples in love and the seagulls above.